God, so here we go, PTSD from last year. Anyway, hello and welcome to the TFD Performance Podcast. Thank you for listening. I know this isn't the first episode back of the year, but it is for me, so I would like to welcome myself back. And I'd also like to say hello, Geordie, the fat dietitian, Sullivan. For those of you who maybe are new listeners and don't recognize my voice, I'm Loz, the XFit Dietitian. So yeah, I'm super, super stoked to be doing the intro, which I knew I would because if you heard last year, Geordie always threw me under the bus. But anyway, Geordie, it's apparent that I can now call you a fellow half Ironmaner, so I think that's a good topic for us to talk about today.
Yeah, we'll deep dive into my Half Ironman experience, but that's the first time I've ever been on a podcast. The 300 podcasts that I've been a part of, that someone's welcomed themselves back to a podcast.
Well, I think, you've got to stand out from the crowd. There's way too many podcasts out there these days. But yeah, I haven't done a podcast for ages. So definitely welcome back to us. And I'm looking forward to bringing it back this year. But yeah, first things first, I want to hear a bit more about it because I had a bit of a social media hiatus over Christmas. And I know we didn't talk heaps about it. But yeah, what was it, I guess, that made you decide, hey, I'm going to do a half Ironman? Obviously, we know you do heaps of crazy training. You've done ultra marathons. You used to do a bit of triathlon. But yeah, what I guess made you flip that switch and say, hey, I'm going to do a half Ironman with minimal training?
I think the biggest part is that I realized how goal orientated I am, and that when I don't have a goal set, it's not dysfunctional for me, but I just operate at a lot better space and a better level when I do have a goal. And I think especially for your training, I appreciate that you need to go through periods of like high and low training, and you need to go through very intense periods, and then you should have like lower periods to let your body rest and recover. And it should all be part of a bigger macro cycle. But like I said, I think having those big goals, and what I've learned over the last few years doing the ultra marathons, is that through the process of going through not just a race or an event, but the process of going through the training for it, you do find out a lot about yourself, and you're always so much better for doing that. And I know this year I have a really big, ambitious race calendar coming up where ever since I started this, it's to run a 100-mile race. And we'll talk about why, like, I've struggled so much fueling wise. That's been a big, big, big component. And so it's both a personal thing, but then professionally, like, I want to figure out, have I cracked this code for people who share the same traits as me, big sweaters, people that, don't handle the heat too well? Have I cracked the code to be able to let these people finish these races? And I think I have for 100K, and I want to see if I can push that through a mile. But to do that, you need to be in a very specific mindset. You need to be in a very specific place mentally. Doing the half Ironman was something that I thought, okay, physically you can do that. You could probably get there, but I know it's going to be extremely challenging. That's kind of the tone I wanted to set, because I know I need to be like that for the next 6 months as I get ready for this next 100-mile race.
Yeah, definitely. And, with the whole, having a goal to work for, obviously, I know it's not all about times, but I'm just curious, did you have a a goal time in mind for this half Ironman, or did you just kind of want to get through?
I did initially, I wanted to do the swim in under like 40 minutes, only because like the swimming, we could talk about it, was the most, it wasn't on the day, but leading into it was the most scary thing, because I haven't spoken about it. I nearly drowned in a pool when I was a kid, and it was like a very traumatic thing. And like my mum jumped in and got me out. And ever since then, I avoided swimming at all costs. And I kind of like built up all these excuses in my mind why I wouldn't do it. And then physically, I once I started the swimming process and started to learn how to do it, like, yeah, you're super energy inefficient. The technique's not great, but I got more and more comfortable with it. I knew I could get it done, but it was more like, how far can you go and like hang in with this like anxiety that's always there, and how much more comfortable can you get with that? And I thought, you know what, if I can do it under 40 minutes, that to me is pretty good. I did it, but like I was definitely a lot more stop start. It made me respect like the open water aspect of like, if you actually do this, how much more terrifying. To me, I still kind of stepped it back. I did it in a pool where it was like, I knew if I needed to, I could put my feet on the ground. I had people next to me just in case I needed to. And there was a few times where I had to do that, where I got like quite overwhelmed, and it's like, get yourself back. But yeah, under there, 40 minutes. I had a very ambitious of like a 3 hour 30 for the ride. And then I think I ended up doing it in, yeah, 350 or something. But the weather was a bit crazy. We'll go over that. The run, I was completely over ambitious on. I thought I'd be going out of this run, and I was like, stuff this. I'm going to crank out like an hour 20 half, and I'm just going to blow this out. And it took me over 2 hours to do it. And it wasn't necessarily that my legs were completely shot. It was a complete fueling disaster for me. But I went in there thinking I'm going to just smoke this. I'll run sub fives. I was confident I'll be cranking out 4:45s. In the limited training that I did do, I was bricking sessions of the very few brick sessions I did going off the bike for 20 miles, and then I do a 10-mile run, just cranking 4-minute 20Ks. And I was like, this would be peace. And then when it happened on the day, it was not a piece. It was absolutely horrendous.
Yeah, I feel like you just don't realize until you hop off the bike just how fucked that feeling is. Even same for me, like I just did my first full marathon. I think it worked out being about 7 weeks before I did my half. And I thought, I've got this run in the bag. 100% run's going to be the easiest part of the event. And the run was the worst part of the event for me. So I know how you feel. And I think obviously when it comes to training, yes, of course, you got to train how you feel, off the bike, you got to run on tired legs. But obviously, like we've discussed, it also comes down to fueling. So I guess we could talk about what you learned, personally from this experience. But I guess from a nutrition perspective, what did that half Ironman, I guess, teach you about, I guess, your own fueling, but then, what we can do with our athletes or what I guess a priority needs to be for us when we are dealing with our endurance athletes.
Yeah, definitely made me respect it a lot more. Like I've always like I respect fueling and I respect that if you want to operate a certain level, you need to fuel in a certain way. I think I took the fueling strategy that I have for like my ultra marathons and tried to apply it to that, and it's absolutely not the same. It's not the same in the sense that logistically it's completely different. When you're up running, you've got a running vest, you've got a pack. There's a whole logistical side of fueling for an ultra marathon with using your pack and using your bladder and different flask and then using aid stations and all of those type of things that allows you to hit your fueling numbers, which you probably won't do if you're just running with say like a running belt around your waist and you've got a handheld flask. You're not gonna, and I think that's what happened to me in this half is that I didn't take it as seriously from a logistical standpoint. I knew what numbers I needed to hit because I hit them all the time in training that for my ultras and whatever else. I just thought, yeah, you know what? I'm going to drink 1.2 to 1.5 liters every hour, and I'll be able to keep doing that. The bike for me will be an opportunity to really get back and rehydrate my body and get in a good position and fuel up. So when I hit that run, I'm good. It absolutely wasn't because logistically, my bike wasn't set up to drink all this fluid. I didn't have like a little box or anything on my bike where I could keep fueling. So I was like very limited of what I could get. And I got through it. Like you're mentally pushed through it, but it took its toll on me. And like I said earlier, the big fascination for me in endurance sports is that a lot of elite level guys have very particular traits. They'll be very low sweaters. They'll be very good in the heat. They'll be able to operate at a very good level on less fuel, like less carbohydrates per hour, where I'm the complete opposite of that. And a lot of people, recreational, lower level athletes, are very much the same, where they're big sweaters, they don't handle the heat. And then to get through these high levels, they need to be pumping in more carbohydrates per hour. And I know that, and I've experimented. That was the hardest thing I had to get over for me to be able to do ultra marathons. And so I knew going into the half, if I didn't do it, I would crash and burn. Thankfully, at least with the half, that when the crash and burn came, I knew I could hold out at least long enough to get it done. If I had to do another hour on that run, I wouldn't have been able to do it. I would have bonked, like, because I hit the wall. I definitely hit the wall. I just logistically couldn't get the amount of fluid in on the bike that I wanted to. I'm not confident riding and drinking. That was a big one. It was raining, hammering down. It was New Year's Day in Brisbane City in Australia. If any of you guys are familiar with what this part of the world went through Christmas and New Year's. It was like torrential downpour for 2 weeks straight. A hurricane came through the Gold Coast and came up north, so ripped apart a bunch of houses and parks and everything. So it was crazy, crazy weather. We went out and we just said, we're going to do it anyway. Like I had two very experienced cyclists with me, which put my mind at a lot of ease. I was still terrified of the bike. So it was just a logistical nightmare and I paid for it.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing with triathlon is specifically. Sorry, I can't even talk today. But yeah, it is the logistics of eating because obviously eating while you're running or drinking while you're running is, yeah, it's not normal at the beginning, but it's so much easier, right? If you need to, you could just stop and walk while you take in a gel. But when you're on the bike, you've got to be confident doing things one-handed. If you've got a rear bottle cage, reaching back to grab your water bottle, bending down, all those types of things. And I know, I guess, how you felt because even I remember my first triathlon, I don't think I took barely any nutrition in because I was way too terrified to take my hands off the handles when you've got people flying past you at, 40 Ks an hour. Um, But now that I've got a tri bike, right, it's a lot easier for me because I've got the little bento box up the front, which I can stuff some gels in. But even then, I'm lucky if I can fit 3 gels in there. So to be honest, I'm like, what is, the purpose of this? I still put a lot of things in the back of my tri suit in the pockets there. But I think it's a huge barrier to kind of fueling in a triathlon as well. Obviously, yes, there are aid stations, but again, if you're a bit of a, spastic on the handles, you're not going to be able to reach out and kind of grab the bottle from the aid station anyway. On that note, I actually have a super embarrassing story in my half Ironman the other week. I went through the first aid station on the bike, and with my plan, I'd kind of planned, okay, cool, I'm going to grab a water from the first aid station, I'll grab the Gatorade from the second aid station, and depending on what I've got, remaining, I'll grab one or the other at the third one. And at the first one, I've reached out to grab the bottle, and I'm right-handed, right? So I had to grab with my left hand. I picked it up, I tried to like drink it, and before it made it into my mouth, I dropped the bottle and I rolled over it and I crunched it. And the people are like the volunteers are all like, oh, like look out kind of thing. And then the next person to give me another bottle, they started running with me because I knew obviously I was not going to catch the bottle. But again, after that, I was fine, right? But it's so embarrassing. And again, it just highlights how something as small as that, right? Imagine if I didn't have any other nutrition on my bike. The only chance I had to get a bottle of water for 25 Ks, I just screwed it up because I dropped it on the ground. So I think it does highlight, obviously, yes, nutrition is important, but so are your bike handling skills and how you can kind of navigate all of that. For me, for these, I guess you could call it shorter distance. It's not short. Half Ironman is still a long distance, but I've always found that kind of going liquid nutrition and gels is what works best for me because it's quite easy to get down quickly. I don't have to take my hand off the bars for too long. I've got a hydration pack on the front of my bike. All I need to do is bend down and take a sip. So for me, those are things that work. But now that I'm training for a longer event, I've obviously got to take a lot more nutrition with me. I've got to really kind of utilize my bike space. And I guess when the time comes, really think about on the course, okay, well, I'm actually going to have to start using the aid stations a bit more now. But yeah, what types of things did you have on your bike?
Yeah, it's funny because that was a big hurdle for me when I figured out my like ultra endurance nutrition was that I realized very fast that the gels and like not that there's anything wrong with the processing. I just don't eat a lot of it in my day-to-day life. So when I took it out on these runs and when I'm training 30, 35 hours a week, you spend a lot of time eating and practicing with these foods. So they pretty much become part of your habitual diet. It just wasn't working with my system. And the best thing I did was swap to more whole foods. And I tried to take that approach as well. So like using sandwiches, using bananas, apricot bites, Vegemite sandwiches, and using, I make up my own carbohydrate mix. I get maltodextrin and fructose and I mix it up all together. And it's worked really well. But exactly that. It was very logistically tough for me to reach in my back and like unzip a bag and get a Vegemite sandwich out and start eating that and then zip it back up and put when I'm traveling at like 30 Ks, which is probably not that fast in the big, but for me, riding my bike twice in the last 2 years, that's pretty fast when it's wet and slippery and I'm with these two other guys that are going crazy. That was very tough. And then in hindsight, I think if I do this again, I will definitely learn how to incorporate. Maybe there are absolutely lots of more natural gels that I'll definitely look and more of the fluid based gels that I'll look at using and incorporating just purely for that convenience and ease because doing that was very tough. And again, it'll come with like as you get better on the bike, I'm sure. Like you said, with ultra running, you get way better at running, going into your pack, getting comfortable with how you breathe and eat and everything. I'm sure there's just art and science to it. But that whole experience maybe that there is a real art and science to purely just fueling on a bike and then transitioning and there's probably a real science to fueling while you're transitioning and getting everything out and limiting transition times getting out and it really made me appreciate that maybe what you're doing for that sport you're going to have a completely different approach for this sport.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in addition to obviously what we just mentioned with the bike handling side of things, another thing that I've learned, I guess, a lot more recently, especially now that I'm out doing, 4, 5 hour rides on the weekend, is that you really want to go for more, I guess, kind of more calorie, like you really want to look for that calorie per volume now of my products, right? Because I used to love these gels and they had, 20 grams of carbs, which is pretty standard and that's fine. But for how much I need, I don't have the space in my back pockets or on my bike to take that much stuff with me. So now it's like, okay, well, I might actually have fewer higher carbohydrate gels, or now I'm incorporating more kind of granola bar type things, dried fruit again, because I'm trying to get as many calories and carbohydrates for as minimal volume as possible. So then it starts to become this art of like, okay, what's going to be the most, efficient fuel source for me so that I'm not, stacked up with, all these different gels and products, but you've actually got a more streamlined thing. And that's kind of what I've been learning myself recently now that my sessions are getting a lot longer. And similar to you, I've done my dash with gels now. I've kind of gone through a bit of a stage, and I'm really liking chews at the moment. I found them super easy to go, like super easy to get down, easy to kind of grab. And yeah, I'm kind of really gravitating towards the chews at the moment. I say that I'm in my chew era, but yeah, kind of dried mango bars. I'm celiac, so that kind of limits the types of energy bars I can get. But those and yeah, higher carbohydrate drink mixes is kind of what's been working for me. So yeah, I suppose for your next half Ironman, we can kind of, go back to the drawing board and maybe install a couple of extra bottle cages on your bike or something.
Yeah, I think the whole thing was very interesting. I'm glad I did it. Like mentally, I'm glad I did it because I went to a place in the Hurt Locker, the Pancake, whatever you want to call it. Like I went there. It was a feeling I recognized very, very quickly of that extreme dehydration. I've been there many times in the ultra marathons, especially when I stuffed up my fueling in my ultra marathons and ended up in the ER and whatnot. So I recognized that feeling. Like I said, I knew I had enough in me to get through it, but I definitely would have crashed and burned if I went further. But I think the biggest thing that it like highlighted for me as well is like, yeah, nutrition is a very interesting thing for these sports. So many sports we talk about nutrition, and it's going to sound very weird coming from a performance nutritionist that tells athletes what to eat every single day to some of the best athletes in the world. But we do overstate the impact of nutrition on performance a lot of the time. Like if you get a rugby player and they go play, yes, it will help, but being a good rugby player is definitely going to be better. And you being able to tackle and you being able to pass the ball. And it's like that for so many sports, especially sports that don't go longer than 60, 90 minutes. With these endurance sports, and more specifically the ultra endurance ones where they go longer, nutrition is just as important as being conditioned. Yes, you need to be extremely conditioned to be able to do the event. You need to have the time in your legs. You need to have your cardiovascular system. You need to have your top end system really well. If you've got a hill and you're going up a bike, that's the only thing I was thankful for doing such a brutal hill session with my coach, like hill training block, as when I was going up on my bike, I knew my legs were conditioned enough to handle that, clear the lactic, and let me keep going. You need to be conditioned. You need to have a mindset to be able to, okay, when this really sucks, and it will, even if you're really well fueled and you're really fit, there's going to be times that absolutely suck and you want to quit, and you need to have the mindset strategies to get through it. But the fueling is absolutely something you need to be on top of because if you run out of carbohydrates, you're then walking the whole time. You can't physically hit these high things and you're probably going to drop out. If you get extremely dehydrated, you might be able to push and push and push, but you're going to get to a point where you physically can't keep going. You're going to get whole body cramps. You're going to overheat and you're going to eventually DNF out of that event. So it's just really reiterated to me how important this whole nutrition piece is. And it's just wild, even when you're researching and looking around, okay, what's the best way to do it? How little information or good information there is out there, and how we kind of just apply these very like general guidelines of have this many carbs per hour and have this much sodium and fluid. And it's like, man, that's like so unhelpful to so many people. And it's crazy that it probably took you and I both a lot of damage to our bodies and a lot of time and effort doing these real to kind of realize that where it seems so simple when you say it out loud. But once you've done one of these events and you've put yourself through that, you really do recognize nutrition is such a huge, important part of being able to actually get through these events.
Yeah, definitely. I think like what you said is true in terms of, for something like rugby or, I don't know, game of tennis. Tennis is probably a bad example because that can go for a long time as well. But yeah, it's really obviously, yes, it's important, but it's not important. Whereas I genuinely feel like I say with, especially triathlon, I guess, ultra endurance, nutrition really can be make or break for the event. And yeah, you don't realize, I guess, the enormity of it until you're doing it and you experience it. And of course, we have a lot of highs, but we also have a lot of lows, which obviously, yes, helps us get better. But for me, and I'm guessing for you the same as well, it really helps when we're talking to people, right? Because they've been through the same crap, or I've been through the same crap, and they can help, I guess, prevent them from going through it because of obviously, yes, of course, there's the theory, but sometimes that theory doesn't necessarily apply, and you're never going to read in a textbook, oh, what if you drop your bottle? Okay, what are you going to do then, right? Obviously, that's not covered in the thing. So it also comes down to that problem solving. But I couldn't agree more that when it comes to the ultra endurance thing, it's not really normal to be exercising for 3+ hours. The toll that takes if you're not taking in the right food and fluid.
Yeah, someone once said to me, if you fuel properly, if you know how much to eat and how much to drink, and you're fit enough and you've got the right mindset, you should be able to go all day, all night, and then another day, and maybe another night. And it's absolutely true. It absolutely is true. And I see it so much, even when I'm training and I go out now and you're like with your training partners and you look at their eating habits and you go, wow, like no wonder you bonk out at this point because that is nowhere near enough fuel what you need to. And yeah, I'm very glad I did it. I guess overall, half Ironman, don't think I'm going to be signing up to another one anytime soon. I think this year I've got my big running goals. I'm glad I did it mentally to kind of frame it and get in the hurt locker and frame everything. I think I definitely do want to do an Ironman after it. I definitely do want to do it. I think I've realized now just how much work you need to do to be able to do that. Conditioning side, mindset, and the fueling. I really need to put a lot more time and effort in getting like a triathlon specific fueling plan. But very glad I did it. But definitely appreciate how much of a sport triathlon is in itself now.
Yeah, definitely. I really enjoyed when you signed me up for that marathon. I at first I hated just running, and then I was like, wow, I love just running. I don't have to go to the pool, I don't have to hop on my bike. I just need to put my runners on and head out the door. But then, getting back into the triathlon training for that half, and now obviously what I'm training for, it's a lot. Training for three disciplines, and then obviously you're doing strength sessions as well. And then if you're a Gumby like me and fall off your bike, then you're having to rehab, injured body parts as well. So it definitely takes a lot. But obviously, for most people right there, they're worrying about the training, they're worrying about the conditioning, they're worrying about their mindset, they're worrying about their nutrition as well. That's a huge factor that I hear so many people worry about, and it causes a lot of stress for them. But luckily for us, right, that nutrition thing isn't necessarily a worry. So I'd kind of hate to put myself in the shoes of someone that is trying to train for a half Ironman, a full Ironman, an ultra marathon, and doesn't necessarily have their nutrition down pat, because I think that would be quite a stressful feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's wrap this up, Loz. But just quickly tell us what you've got going on, what you're getting ready for now.
Yeah, well, I have been pretty quiet about this one, partly because I'm not impressed with my couple of injuries that I've had, but I am doing my first full Ironman in I think it's about 7.5 weeks. So again, nothing I ever saw myself doing, let alone this year. But yeah, looking forward to it. I've got that. I'm going to New Zealand, Ironman New Zealand in Taupo, 2nd of March. So yeah, training's really ramping up now, kind of trying to fit that in either side of the workday. And my weekends are pretty much gone now. Got a 5 hour ride and then a swim and then a run and a gym. So, if any of my friends are listening to this podcast and they wonder why I keep dogging their plans on a weekend, it's nothing personal. I just don't really have much of a life, but lucky my partner and I are kind of going through this together. So we've got company, but that is what I'm training for. So looking forward to it, and hopefully I don't drop too many bottles on this course.
Yeah, how good. All right, we will do plenty more podcasts to keep everyone updated with what both Loz and I are doing. But if you guys are listening and you do have specific topics or specific questions you have on that, hit us up on our Instagram, shoot us an email, however you want to get in contact with us. But we will catch you guys next time.
Thanks, Geordie. See you guys.